Thank you, Acting Speaker, and I rise to support the Leader of the Nationals with this motion that this House condemns Bill Shorten and the Federal Labor Party for its destructive plan to shut down WA's live export industry and calls on the McGowan government to stand up and fight to save an industry which generates hundreds of jobs in Western Australia. And I emphasise the jobs part of it because that is the mantra of this government: jobs, jobs, jobs. And if this export industry goes down, there's probably 3,500 jobs that will be lost. So I certainly call on the McGowan government to stand up and fight to save that industry.
Mr. Remember that they're prepared to change state agreements for $3,000, but
oh, yep. That's right. Not a problem. Not a problem. Acting Speaker, I certainly don't want federal Labor doing deals in inner Melbourne seats, trying to dictate what happens in the WA sheep industry, and that's really what happens. We see these preference deals being done. We've got to protect our inner Melbourne seats to look after the green element in inner Melbourne, inner Sydney. And I can confirm actually for the Leader of the Nationals that Bill Shorten has not consulted, and he hasn't been over the Darling Scarp in the last couple of years. He did go to Kalgoorlie for 3 hours the year before last. So that is the extent of his consultation in the regions of WA. So for us to have the fate of the WA live export sheep industry in the hands of Bill Shorten, Joel Fitzgibbon and the Honourable Alana McTiernan, heaven forbid, if the Labor Party, the federal opposition, is elected on Saturday. That's all I can say. And Acting Speaker, I'm a farmer with a farm between Katanning and Kojonup, and that farm has always been predominantly sheep. So I've got a very strong understanding of how the live sheep export industry works. Over the last 35 to 40 years, we've sold sheep through the live export trade. And I understand how important this industry is. And it's really important because, as the numbers dictate, we've got 1.7 million sheep that are actually sold into the live export industry, and there's 3.8 million sheep that are put through our processing industry. So that's about a third of the sheep in WA, and that's a really important part of the price mechanism as well within our WA livestock industry. And probably my community of Katanning is probably more involved in the sheep and the live sheep industry than any other town in Australia. When you look at it, the Katanning sale yards recently built the largest undercover sale yards in the Southern Hemisphere, around about 25,000 odd sheep that can be put undercover, up to 30,000 at times if necessary. And that's been a fantastic asset to the community of Katanning and the whole Great Southern, to be honest. And it was actually good to see the member for Armidale ventured into the Katanning sale yards the year before last, just to improve his knowledge about the sheep industry. So I know the people of Katanning and surrounds are very appreciative of you coming along there. Very good, thanks, member for Armidale. And can I also add in that WAMCO, the state's largest sheep processor, with around about 350 employees, is also an integral part of the sheep industry. So we've got both in Katanning. We've got the sale yards, we've got buyers there buying for the live export industry, and then we've also got WAMCO, which exports to US, Europe, and so forth. So we've got every angle covered. And what I want to point out is that WAMCO, WA Meat Marketing Cooperative, they have been struggling for many years to actually get the labour required for their processing industry. So when some of our members opposite make these sweeping statements that, oh no, well we can just process everything in Western Australia, not a problem. Those 1.7 million extra sheep cannot be processed in Western Australia. Firstly, because they're not always suitable for processing, but secondly, we cannot physically get the labour, and that's part of why our multicultural community in Katanning exists, because a lot of our labour comes from the Burmese community, the Chinese community, the Afghan, and of course, as Minister for Heritage there knows, the Christmas and Cocos Island population, which came in 1975, and they were a large part of the stability of the workforce of WAMCO. So I just want to point that out because it's very important that there is an understanding.
They love you out there, I must
I know, thank you, thanks Member for Armidale. Well, hopefully, hopefully I get on well with the large majority of my electorate. Thanks, thanks, Minister. But look, the WAMCO, when I look at it, I regularly communicate with Col McCreary, Managing Director, Tony Bessel, Manager of the Katanning Works, and Nigel Aitken, who actually goes out every morning in the minibus to pick up workers, because that's how hard it is to actually get a full roster of workers at the Katanning plant. So,
The lady in the street, she said to me, "You're not a politician to me. I'm not a politician, eh? Because I hate politicians." I said, "Yes, I am. I'm Peter Rundle." That's it.
I knew there was a reason why you strayed into the electorate of Roe recently there, Minister. But look, having said that, WAMCO does a fantastic job. We're very proud of the way they work, and I think they're a great asset for the Great Southern community. And when I look at it, I think live export it's an integral part of sheep farming from Esperance right through to Geraldton, and also covers many parts of the pastoral areas as well. It's a $200 million industry, and as the Leader of the Nationals pointed out, 86% of the national market for live export is sourced in Western Australia. And you just can't flick the switch and say that we will process everything in Western Australia. It doesn't work like that. Many of the sheep aren't necessarily suitable to process, as I said. They might be 33 or 34 kilo live weight, where the lambs, they're only score 1, and they're just not suitable to process. And they don't fit into a market. And I think this is where there's a distinct lack of understanding from many within the Labor Party, perhaps not state Labor Party, but certainly federal. Certainly Bill Shorten has got absolutely no understanding, and I believe Joel Fitzgibbon has got maybe slightly more, but not much more. So apart from those sheep not being suited for processing, there's not necessarily the markets for that type of product. And this is where I become concerned when we've got the Honourable Alana McTiernan, our Ag Minister, talking to our Middle East markets about how we can just change from live sheep to exporting chilled product. It demonstrates her lack of understanding. And I think I've got an article here from the West Australian 22nd of May 2018, where it quotes that Australia's biggest live sheep customer has confirmed it has started looking elsewhere for supply amid suggestions Australia could stop the trade. And this is another one of this is Al Mawashi, the Kuwait-based livestock trading company, and they were concerned because for the past 40 years they've been buying up to 2/3 of their 1.8 million head of sheep that are exported out of Western Australia. So when we have our state agriculture minister suggesting to them, suggesting to the Qatar government as well that yes, you know, the trade is going to end, there's a possibility you better start looking for your sheep elsewhere, because there's a good possibility we're going to end our live export industry. And that was really concerning to me when I heard about that last year. And what she fails to understand is that chilled product, yes, we all agree that's good, but there is very limited refrigeration in some of these countries. And what will happen is that the live export product will be replaced by sheep from Somalia, Sudan, Ethiopia, and many other countries, and this is what I worry about. People haven't thought at the next level. I can assure you the animal welfare standards of those countries are nowhere near what Australia has. So I just want to bring that to people's attention, because I believe that hasn't been talked about enough. And I think I'd just like to go through a bit of a timeline from last year of what the activities of our party were. The leader of the Nationals did talk about some of those. And I think we all saw the vision, which no one found acceptable, and which I might like to add is now under police investigation. So that's something to keep in mind about its authenticity. And it was also, as I said when I came down here last year one night to talk about animal welfare, it was like a military operation. It was a military operation. That vision was on, it was held by those putting out that footage, held back for 6 months. So if they were really interested in animal welfare, they wouldn't have held it for 6 months. And then the Monday morning, we all come into our parliamentary office. There's the book on live export, the welfare, animal welfare issues. So I certainly questioned that last year. I did have some grief from the likes of the member for Maylands and Balcatta, member for Thornley, and I was trying to explain to the member for Belmont as well about how we actually care for our animals on farm. We don't want to see anything happen to them. It's in our interest to produce a good quality animal. The better the quality of animal, the better the return. And to the credit of the member for Belmont, she spoke to me afterwards about that. And I think it's a really important issue to understand that we are, as farmers, very interested in the welfare of our animals. So look, moving on, the Nationals, we went to the first meeting at Darkin. The Compass Agricultural Group put it together. That was straight after the immediate reaction to the group. Leader of the Nationals, the Honourable Colin de Grusser, and myself turned up. 150 sheep farmers, and they were a positive group. They were suggesting improvements that could be made. Unfortunately, no one from the State Labor Party turned up. So the party that says it's the regional party for Western Australia, a major issue of our whole sheep industry, no one turned up. Disappointing, to say the least. Then, of course, we had the Katanning meeting with over 1,000 people, emceed by Owen Grieve, the likes of John Hassell, the candidate for O'Connor now, who's also sort of chaired part of the meeting, WA Farmers Federation, several other colourful characters there. Several other colourful characters there. And I will say it was a passionate meeting, and I will give credit to the Honourable Alana McTiernan. She did turn up. She defended her position. And that wasn't a bad effort, considering there was 1,000 odd farmers and people in the industry there. And what we listened to, we would listen to stories of how important this industry is to the people of regional WA. We had Chloe McDougall there, farmer from Dumbleyung, 2 young children. Very important to her farming family. The continuity of this industry. We had Alan McFarlane from Katanning Furnishings telling us how important it is to the business sector of the Great Southern. Ben Poet, who has carted my sheep over the years. Fantastic young guy, young family. He had not been able to cart a load of sheep for 4 months. 4 months, member for Armidale. And honestly, the continuity of his business was really affected by this cessation, I guess you could call it. Then we had Macco Feeds as well. And the industry of Macco Feeds, 90% of their business is about supplying pellets to the live export industry. So I think there's a lack of understanding about the flow-on effects. And this is the 3,500 people that are affected. The 3,500 people that are affected by this industry. And of course, then we have the livestock shipping companies themselves, LSS, Emmanuel's and Wellards, who I might add, the likes of Wellards have spent several tens of millions of dollars getting their ships up to a high standard. From there, the Honourable Colin de Grusser and I, we went to Canberra. We asked the Federal Minister, David Littleproud, if he could come across. He came across, as Leader of the Nationals mentioned, consulted, went out to Beverley, spoke to growers there. We had a forum as well in Parliament House with many of the relevant parties, the transporters, the Shearing Association, the feed industry, farmers of course, and he really consulted well. And then we took Minister Littleproud to the Katanning sale yards to look at the facility, to talk to growers, to talk to agents, to talk to the buyers who buy sheep for the industry and for the abattoirs. The Nationals have done everything we can to consult, to improve communication and to try to help the industry at a state level. And as far as I'm concerned, I'd like to, can I have a short extension?
Yes, extension, granted.
Thank you, Acting Speaker. I'd like to congratulate the Sheep Collective and Holly Ludeman as a vet who has got a full understanding of the live export industry and the ships. And I'd like to congratulate them on what they have done in actually inviting all members of Parliament, all industry groups to actually come and have a look. Come and have a look how the sheep are loaded. Come and have a look how it works. And I'd like to thank those members who have actually taken up that opportunity to improve their knowledge from this House and the other House. Very important, because as we know now, mortality is down to below 0.4 of 1%. That's actually less than what you get if you leave the sheep out in the paddock on the farm. There's less density in the pens. There's obviously the 3-month ban, which the actual industry itself has actually placed on itself. So that's really interesting to me, how they've actually made those changes proactively. And I certainly congratulate the industry on that, those elements, to take those strides over the last 18 months and to improve the welfare outcomes and also improve their social licence. Because I think we all acknowledge that that probably was something that needed to happen. And if I can just highlight one disappointment for me, I guess, is that the state government has not provided any correspondence to indicate consultation with the federal opposition has taken place. I'm not aware of any consultation, Acting Speaker. The state government certainly hasn't provided any modelling to tell us what happens if and when the federal government cuts this industry off, what's going to happen for regional employment and for our regional WA economy. As I said, 3,500 jobs will be lost in the first year. So the Government for Jobs has not provided us with any modelling. And the Minister for Agriculture has stated that her goal is to deliver a proper transition away from live export. And I think we're pretty well aware of that from having seen the footage of our Agriculture Minister standing on the Fremantle Bridge with her placards, with her friends there several years ago, looking to ban the live export industry. So I think we've got a pretty good understanding of where she stands. And I certainly condemn. I condemn the Honourable Alana McTiernan for what I would say for what she hasn't done for the sector. That would be the way I would put it. And when I look at some of the quotes that I've got here from the Countryman and the West Australian, the state's two biggest farming groups accuse Ms McTiernan of undermining Emmanuel's ability to manage animal welfare on its ships. That was done when she raided. She raided, took it off her own bat to actually raid Emmanuel's, if you don't mind. So sheep and cattle are on the ocean. Minister has taken away the tools Emmanuel need to maintain their control. This was what someone from the Emmanuel's spoke about. And then the WA Farmers Livestock President, David Slade, said that despite the trade coming under federal jurisdiction, the State Minister appeared determined to disrupt it as much as possible. It is clear that the Minister is doing everything in her power to inflame hostility to the live export industry, he said. And I think this demonstrates how there was I guess you could say, a lack of trust. A lack of trust, and we saw the headline, Acting Speaker, "Are you kidding?" The West Australian newspaper. I think that pretty well described it there in a nutshell. So we've got an Ag Minister who's meant to act on behalf of our sheep industry, and all we get is the anti-argument. And as I said, we've got our memory of the Minister standing on the Fremantle Bridge. And certainly, in summarising, Acting Speaker, I condemn Joel Fitzgibbon and the way he only seems interested in quite frankly, the northern cattle industry. He has said, oh, okay, we'll ban the sheep, we'll phase out the live sheep export industry, but no problems with the northern cattle industry, that's fine. That's the old eastern states mantra. Not a problem up there in the northern cattle industry. So we've got that. He's left our WA sheep growers to hang out to dry. And I strongly condemn Bill Shorten. As I said, he hasn't been over the Darling Scarp for a couple of years, apart from his trip to Kalgoorlie for a couple of hours. And I condemn the way the Federal Labor Party should, which hopefully they won't, be elected on Saturday, and their destructive plan to phase out the live export industry. And I call on the Premier and I call on his Ag Minister to stand up and fight to save an industry and to stick to your mantra of saving and creating jobs